In the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. We have a really full program for you tonight. Thank you so much for being here. It is really a pleasure to have both Lighthouse Studios here and Jordy Yager. So we have Lighthouse. I do want to acknowledge Lighthouse. They are a local nonprofit organization. Brown is partnering with Lighthouse. They are dedicated to student film work. Go to their website. We are hopeful that some of you might get interested in going to Lighthouse, working with some of the students, participating with their programs. So we are just delighted that they were willing to come in tonight and do the videotaping for us for our backstage. They're going to edit it, right, Elizabeth, and upload it, hopefully with the help of our tech masters, to our external website. And each week, I'm going to keep you updated on things that are going on in Brown. One thing is our website external is changing. We've done a major edit this past week, so please go to it, click on the courses button, click on Backstage, look and see what we're loading there, and also check all the other information that's on our website. Okay, so let me just go ahead and get started here and kick off a couple of things. So you know, last week I was sharing with you things that you're most proud of, and I told you I wouldn't be able to do all of them, so let me just continue with the few remaining ones that we have and a couple of new ones that I collected during the week. So we have somebody in this room who's really proud of having overcome a lot of concussions due to high school sports. They're really proud of having overcome those concussions. I'm glad to hear that. Somebody is really proud of participating in the UVA Curry School Young Writers Workshop. Got a lot out of that and wants to do creative writing. Somebody got the name of a middle school changed. Now, they didn't tell me if they got it changed to their name or not, but good accomplishment. Okay, this one I had to think about. Just remember, this is not me. This is the person that shared it. They were really proud of having volunteered a lot in an Alzheimer's unit, but they can't remember much more about it. I mean, I'm just reading. It's terrible. I should not have done that. It's on tape, but you understand the spirit in which we're sharing things that you wrote. Be careful. Generally proud of having made it through a lot of stuff with a smile. Absolutely. This person survived a 14-mile hike on 8 ounces of water after having meandered into the West Virginia mountains and making a few unfortunate miscalculations as to where they were and which way to go. Obviously, they made it out because they were here to tell us about it. 8 ounces of water, can you imagine this? 14 miles. Okay, they are proud of being on a dance team that raised over $12,000 by hosting a charity show for international organizations. It was a type of World's Fair. Super. Somebody's very proud of having gotten 4th at a state meet in an 800-meter run after having been seated last. How depressing. I mean, you're going to this run and you're seated last. They came in 4th and they set a personal record. And finally, we have someone here who's very proud that for their senior project in high school, they were able to write a book on NASA history titled All Systems Go, an encyclopedia of NASA's human spaceflight missions. And guess what? It's available as a free ebook at blurb.com. Go get it. Find out who that person is. So you've got your work cut out for you, yes? All right, I just want to say a couple other things here. I'm really proud of you all for having filled out as many bingo signatures that you did. We have 4 people who actually were able to complete the bingo box and got a signature in every box. So we're going to definitely need to be able to give a round of applause to Emma, Kristen, Eleanor, Andy, Braden, and Miles. So congratulations, you all, and give yourselves a round of applause for all the wonderful things that you have accomplished. Now, I don't normally do this, but I'm really proud of the fact that Emma, where's Emma? Emma, can I toss this to you, Emma? All right, Emma, that's for you. Whoops, okay. Who else do we have here? Eleanor, Kristen, where's Eleanor? Kristen, you guys are all sitting together. Come here and take this. I feel bad throwing these things at you. All right. We have this for you. Ann, Andy, Braden, Miles. Who else is here? Okay, Braden, come this way.
Miles is my last name.
Miles is your last name. Holden. All right, Holden. Holden, I have to get you one. It's in that box. I'm tied to this wire. I can't do it right now. So you got it. All right. So I think we got everybody covered, yes? Just about? All right, so thank you very much for everything that you're doing here. And we have obviously a lot of good things to look forward to during the course of this semester. And immediately, though, we have Jordy Yager to look forward to. So at this point, we're going to switch microphones here, and we're going to turn this over to Jordy. And Jordy has a bit of information to share with you, a few things for you to do, and a few things to think about. So let's give Jordy a round of applause for being here. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jordy. I thought, so I really want this to be like a conversation, a discussion between us. And I think that for some of us, talking out loud and asking questions, you know, kind of by raising hands, shouting out, that sort of thing, is the easiest. But for some of us, it can be a little bit intimidating with a group of people this size. So that's my phone number. I got my phone in my hand. So text me a question if you got a question that you don't want to actually raise your hand and ask. And I will read it, or maybe just answer it. But either way. So I'm Jordy Yager. 35 years old. I was born and raised in Charlottesville, Virginia. And here, I can get, sorry about that. I teach an INST here. And so it's in parts media production, but then it's also with a special bent towards civil rights issues. And so that's kind of who I am, but I'll tell you a little bit about how I got here, and then we can kind of open it up to having a more free-flowing conversation, and I can tell you a little bit about the things that I'm doing now. So how many of you guys, does anybody here know what they want to do with the rest of their life? You do? Oh man, that's impressive. Do you want to share?
I want to be a biochemist.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I, like most of you guys, congratulations, did not know what I wanted to do, and actually ended up promptly moving at 18 years old up to Brooklyn, New York, to go to Brooklyn College. I spent about a couple years there, and then transferred out to school in Iowa. Ended up majoring in Sanskrit. Does anybody know what Sanskrit is? Yeah, maybe one or two. Yeah, so that's basically the employment prospects of graduating with Sanskrit, is about that. And so I promptly moved back to New York City and started diving into journalism. So Sanskrit is a very dead language. It's spoken in only one village in India. It was one of the originating languages that's still being practiced today. But you're basically guaranteed to be cloistered in the bottom of some basement, studying over old text and translating. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to participate with the world and be a part of it. And so I started going into journalism, and part of that journalism brought me to Boston. Hey, Sue, brought me to Boston University, and that's where I ended up going to grad school and studying journalism professionally. And then that brought me back down to D.C. And that's where I spent the bulk of my career. So I started covering state politics in Massachusetts, but then went to Washington, D.C., where I was a congressional reporter. Now, does anybody watch Scandal or House of Cards? Yeah, okay, a few people. So it's nothing like that. That's like the salacious version of it. It's actually quite interesting, but quite droll at the same time. So you get to understand the meat, how the meat is made, how bills are actually processed, all the different backroom deals. Nobody gets killed, or very rarely do people get killed. But it is interesting nonetheless. But something happened during my time there that was eye-opening to me, and that was the newspaper business started freaking out because the internet started becoming a thing, and it didn't know how it was going to make ends meet, and so because everything was available for free. So some people put up paywalls and started charging people for content, but then people were like, why am I going to pay for something that I get for free over here? And so it started this whole discussion, and what ended up happening is that you sell, so the basic gist of it is you sell ad revenue to support your news organization, whether it's Washington Post or whether it's the Huffington Post. But the way that you do that is by selling clicks to your website, right? Does that make sense to everybody? Right. So it's kind of 101 marketing. But the way that happens is that you have to have an article that's interesting. And so what that then created was this chicken egg sort of scenario where you have politicians who are elected to these powerful positions getting up and saying some tomfoolery and salacious thing so that they can get picked up on a website, so that then will get more clicks so that that website and news organization can stay afloat and make their bottom line. So it's this weird cycle where you have news organizations that are trying to make money, and so they have this constant need to have information that's impactful. You know, so the name calling, the lack of context, all of these sorts of things are started to come about and give rise. And I personally got kind of fed up with it. And so what I then did was I was there about 7 years. And it was just kind of sad and disheartening. And so from there, I decided to quit, basically. So I started to take all these job opportunities and kind of field like the Associated Press or Reuters or Bloomberg News, and I didn't like where that was going to go. And so I said, you know what, I'd rather focus on stories that I thought were important or that I was seeing fall through the cracks. All right, so just to give you a sense of like the amount of intelligence and man hours and intellect that's concentrated in the congressional Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C. Can anybody guess how many accredited reporters there are on Capitol Hill at any given time? Not all at once. Come on. So who says 100? Here. All right, thank you, Brave. Who says 1,000? Got one taker. Who says 2,000? Couple more. 3,000? So it's 2,500 accredited reporters on Capitol Hill at any given time. And that's not including independent producers, that's just, you know, fully accredited people. But you would never know that by the amount of news coming out of Washington, D.C., because everybody's battling to tell variations of the same story. And so what I saw was this massive concentration of intellect and power and money without very much output. And so the quality and the nuance and the context of stories was being dropped by the wayside. And I don't pretend to have a hero complex whatsoever, but I did decide that it wasn't worth my time being there. And so I moved back here with the notion that I was due for a break from cities, and so I moved to a little log cabin on 16 acres south of Charlottesville. And I grew up here, and so my mother's still here, and so I help her out with everything. Hey, and so what I decided to do was focus on stories that I thought were important, and by and large what that has meant is issues around poverty. And so you guys probably know that poverty has a lot of different tentacles, and it can affect a lot of different things. And so I want to share just real quick with you one of those stories, just to give you an example, because it's kind of a little bit esoterical right now. But this is just kind of, so I did a series. One of the first things that I dove into when I came back was kind of setting aside chunks of time. So 9 months here, 12 months here, just so I can really dive deep into a story. And one of the first things, have you guys gotten off grounds yet and gone and ventured up 29, I don't know, to any of the stores, that sort of thing? Okay, so have you seen any of the guys flying signs, as they say, the panhandlers? So those are the people that growing up, we had maybe one or two on the corner or downtown, but you never really saw them out in the numbers that you see them today. And so they stand, there's a triangle there by Kmart and Whole Foods and Kroger and Best Buy, and they kind of float. And so everybody had this, I would ask people, I said, where do these folks come from? And everybody had this different idea of and hypothesis, and some would say they're this, you know, there's a ring, they're extortion ring, and there's a ringleader, and they all pay him, and they, you know, collaborate there and pool their money, and, you know, it's one of the most lucrative professions in all of Charlottesville. Another person would say, oh, they come in from Stanton or Waynesboro and they're shipped in, and you know, another person would say, oh, they all have houses. I saw one guy get into a Lexus, and you know, everybody has their own little theory, but I didn't really, and so because they were so contradictory that I didn't know what to make them, I decided to go out and just start spending time with them. So I spent over the course of 9 months, I spent time in their camp. Some are actually legitimate homeless. Some do have housing. Some are addicted to drugs. Some are alcoholics. Some are not. Some are veterans. I mean, as you can imagine, as we probably have in this room, there's a whole smorgasbord of incidents that provide somebody with the ability to be homeless. And it is a horrible experience. I hope none of you have to experience it, but it is one that can easily snowball if you don't have the support networks that a lot of us have, whether it's family or friends, that we all make mistakes, but it's whether those mistakes trickle down very quickly to becoming soon you don't have a car, soon you don't have a car, so you can't get to work. So soon you don't have a job, and now soon you don't have a job, so now you don't have a house. And soon you don't have a house, and now you're homeless. And so then how do you get your car back? How do you get your license back? All of these things are built so that if there's a trickle down that happens, it's very hard to come back. And so that's what I wrote a 5,000 word article on it and really dived down into some of these issues. And so then one of the next things I did was on hunger and food insecurity in Charlottesville and the surrounding areas, so the counties. And it's interesting because the hunger you see when you see panhandlers is not the hunger that is representative in the numbers. So some of the numbers that I'll discuss here, but it's more of the hidden cost of hunger. And so I'll just play, it's about 5 minutes long. And I'm assuming that, is there a volume over here?
It should be on the keypad here.
Awesome. All right, so I'm in a car with a guy named Adam Wright. Can anybody hear?
I'm riding along with 30-year-old Adam Wright. Wright's an airline pilot by trade, but in his off hours, he delivers food for Charlottesville's Meals on Wheels.
Good morning, Mr. Hare. My pleasure. Have a wonderful day.
Every day, 5 days a week, Meals on Wheels delivers about 270 meals to people in the Charlottesville area who are homebound or who can't cook for themselves.
Right now, our age group runs from 23 to 96.
Lee Tripp is the executive director of Meals on Wheels in Charlottesville.
The younger ones tend to have some type of debilitating disease or a mental disorder that does not allow them to care for themselves. But this allows them to live independently because they've got somebody to bring them food every day. But 80% of the people that we serve are over 65, and about 65% are over 75. So it is mostly an elder population. I mean, we're talking about people who were, the librarian in your school, the postal worker who came to your house every day. They're people that you saw, and then you don't see them anymore, and you don't think about them, but they're there and they need us.
The Charlottesville Meals on Wheels was started 38 years ago by 4 women in a church basement. They delivered 8 meals a day. Today, that has grown to 4 part-time staff and a network of 180 volunteers. Each meal costs about $5.50. But because most of their clients are too poor to afford the meals, about 3/4 of the 270 daily meals they deliver are fully subsidized through the private donations they receive from local supporters. Tripp says they don't receive any set government funding. Most of the rest of their clients pay a sliding fee, somewhere between $1 and $4 per meal, depending on their income.
They're choosing, if we don't feed them, they're choosing between buying food and paying for their medicine or paying for their home. That's not a fair choice. Nobody should have to make that choice, especially when you get older. I mean, what can they do otherwise? They can't go back to work.
Today they're serving up potatoes, chicken nuggets, and spinach, perhaps?
A handful of volunteers prepare meals in the basement of the Charlottesville headquarters. They're packed into a series of coolers, which are each labeled with a different route number. On a recent Friday, Adam Wright gets Route 15. He's got a total of 10 deliveries, some of which include meals intended to last clients through the weekend. One of those is Hortensia Cruz.
Miss Cruz, got some meals for you. You got a minute for a reporter?
Cruz invites me into her small living room, where we sit and talk for half an hour. She lives by herself and has narcolepsy and a rare illness called stiff person syndrome. It causes her to have random seizures because her senses are extraordinarily heightened. Loud noises, bright lights, sudden touches, these can all send her into convulsions. She wears a giant set of ear protectors around her neck, the kind that lumberjacks or construction workers wear.
Yeah, I cannot go to church, to a movie, to a party, concert, nothing. To a reunion, barbecue, because some people talk loud. Even the hospital, I had to talk in the front desk and ask them, is there a place where I can hide from the noise? And then they put me in a room by myself. So I cannot socialize. Like, I wish I could, you know.
Once, she tried to go to the grocery store, but a nearby shopper sneezed loudly. Cruz dropped to the floor as her body began to tense up and spasm. She doesn't know what she'd do without Meals on Wheels. She's scared of cooking for fear that she'd burn her house down if she had a seizure while at the stove. But it's more than just delivering meals to those in need. For many of these folks, this is the only contact they have with another human being throughout the course of the week. Volunteers aren't just delivery drivers, they're also caretakers. Meals on Wheels has emergency contact numbers for everyone they serve. If a volunteer is worried about a client, that number gets called. If they don't answer, the police are there within 30 minutes to check on them.
A couple of times they have had to break in and they found people on the floor and gotten them to hospitals. Since I've been here, it's all worked out really well.
Knowing they're the only touchstone for many of their clients, Meals on Wheels tries to go one step further, sending birthday and holiday cards to folks as well, reminding them that they're not entirely alone.
And we had one lady call, and she wasn't complaining, but everybody in the office cried over it. But she called to tell us that we were the only people in the world who remembered her birthday. And that she wasn't doing that to make us feel sorry for her. She was just telling us how appreciative she was that we actually did it. It's hard to think of people being that alone, but they are.
For WMRA News, I'm Jordy Yager.
So that was one of 5 different stories. So I chose, each story kind of focused on a chunk, and so this was kind of the hidden, hungry and food insecure folks in Charlottesville that you don't really see. And then I did one piece on rural food insecurity, so folks that live in the county that can't get to grocery stores. I did another one about urban insecurity, another on what's being done in schoolyard gardens. So now every public school in Charlottesville has a garden that provides food for their meals during school. About, I forget the actual statistics, but a significant portion, I think it's like 75% of some schools' students are on free and reduced lunch. And so that's a large portion that falls under the poverty line. But before I go, I can talk for a while longer about all of this, but do you guys have any questions at this point? I mean, I'm happy to talk about what DC life is like, what the political world is like, whether this is something that any of you guys want to do as far as journalism is concerned. I'm also a touchstone for all of you for the community here in Charlottesville. So anything and everything that you want to know about Charlottesville, chances are I either can answer myself or I can point you in the right direction. So before I go any further, you guys have any questions? Yeah.
Are there opportunities for like students to help with these organizations?
Yes. Oh, totally. And you would probably be the best person. There, what is it? The outreach folks on the governing board, community outreach.
We have 2 community outreach co-chairs, don't we? Yes.
I believe so.
Who are those people? You need to find them, talk to them. It's great. I'm sure.
Yeah.
they have ideas.
No, they are. And
organize it, help work out transportation. Excellent.
And if there's a specific area, like if you want to work with children, or if you want to work with even like a specific set of children, or if you want to work with, if you don't want it like a hands-on and interactive thing, if you want to be behind the scenes and kind of making a difference, then it's everything from homelessness to financial literacy to, like you said, Meals on Wheels to, food banks, that sort of thing. But then also, I'll talk about this a little later on, but we're a hub for International Rescue Committee. So that means that we get up to 250 refugees from all over the world each year settled in Charlottesville. And so the city itself is about 55,000, 60,000 people. And they make up a significant chunk. Over the years, obviously some have come and gone, but we have a Bhutanese population that's huge and vibrant, and they're awesome, and a Burmese population that's equally as big. Lesser so in numbers are Afghani and Iraqi families. Also big is Congolese. There's a Congolese church in the middle of Barbersville, which is like the sticks, and every Sunday they pack it full of 50 people, and it gets pretty hopping. But anyway, so I got a question. So how do you judge how long to make an audio report? Basically, that's dictated by how long I have on. So does anybody here listen to NPR? Oh, wow. Yeah. All right. Cool. So, but it's probably mostly online. Like radios don't exist that often anymore, right? You have one? Nice. So any which way you do, but so like morning edition, right, is on every day, and all things considered. So during those programs, we have an allotted slot for local stuff, and usually it's about five and a half minutes long. And so I tend to go a little bit longer for stuff that I can throw up on the website. And NPR itself has different kind of time restraints and that sort of thing. But I do all my editing myself, and I'd be happy to teach you guys how to edit and kind of set levels and do all that too if you're interested. All right, so what else? Is anybody else having any questions? Yes.
Are there any major campaigns against media sensationalism right now?
That's a great question. You mean actually organized sort of there are great news organizations that kind of battle it in their own way. So you're seeing kind of, it's cool to see because the fallout could have been really dismal and pretty yucky, and yet people stepped up to the plate. And so you have organizations like ProPublica, which is a nonprofit that does long-form investigative journalism really, really well, and they're not tethered to any sort of corporate interest or ad revenue. And so they can let the reporters off the leash, and they're such good reporters. Similarly, the Marshall Project, based out of New York, does the same sort of thing, but on criminal justice issues. You see, so good reporting still exists. Just the other day, Shane Bauer published a piece. It's 40,000 words. It's the size of a book, where he spent 4 months in a private prison working as a security guard, and then wrote about it. And as a result, you could say, which came first, but the Obama administration said, you know what, we're going to turn back our use of national federal prisons, or private prisons, and with a Bureau of Prisons. So it's cool to see this kind of causation. Journalism still has a very visceral impact. You might not know that by watching our political campaigns, but it's on certain levels it is still effective, and there are people fighting the good fight on a larger scale than just kind of doing independent, freelance sort of stuff. So I don't know about national, organized efforts to fight sensationalism. There are definitely things to counterbalance. For every Weekly Standard, you have The Nation magazine, stuff like that. But was there a question over here? Yeah, right.
If you're a freelance writer, then how do you get published, and is there a lot of competition for, say, you to get that 5-minute slot?
Yeah. Well, so different markets, different competition. So when I'm doing a story for NPR, it is pretty fierce as far as who I'm up against, because they have a national staff of reporters that they pay very well to do their job very well, and so you're going up against them. So your story better be good, have a good angle, and you better be a good reporter. And so that's a little bit more tricky than, say, on a local level, where there are more outlets and less competition to be in those outlets. But basically, you have to perfect the pitch. So even if you're in business, or if you're going for a job interview, these are all skills that I'm kind of having to retrain myself in, as far as you need to sell yourself, within 3 paragraphs, as far as a story is concerned. Say, this is what it's about, this is why I'm perfect for it, and this is why you should take me up on it. And some reporters do, 10 kind of quasi interviews before they even get to the point of being able to pitch, because they don't know if there's a story there or not. So, some things are relatively simple, like, hey, there's an event, I'm going to cover it. Other things that take a little bit more time, you have to, I didn't know that, a 5-part series of hunger was going to be evident. I just went into it doing one story. And then I was like, wait, there are so many different threads that I can pick up on that all have to do with the same sort of thing. And so why don't I pursue all of those and then pitch it as a package, and that obviously pays better. But I also supplement my income by doing construction and carpentry, and I also teach little kids how to cook. So through the PB&J Fund, actually, which is an awesome organization. Speaking of organizations, they teach little kids up to probably, I want to say, mid-high school range. Basically the ins and outs, everything from how to measure, how to cut, to how to bake, and how to saute, and how to do all sorts of technical sort of things. And they do it in all of the middle and elementary schools, but then they also do it at their main kitchen right across from the downtown public library. And I teach a class over the Boys and Girls Club, which is near the middle school. And that's really fun. They are a handful, I'll tell you, but they are fun. Yeah.
What drew you to the issue of hunger and food insecurity?
I just think it's one of those things is there anybody here that didn't choose what they had to eat today? Right. So we all have that choice. Then we all have a dozen other choices that we make. We choose what we wear in the morning. We choose whether we go to class or not. We choose whether we get up or not. We choose whether we can brush our teeth. All of these are huge choices. But when you don't have the resources to be able to afford your food, you get what's given to you. And that may seem like something that's kind of, it's like, oh, well, like you should be happy to get whatever. But that's a huge human dignity that you go without. And I think that alone is worthy of attention. But then to look at the fact that it's just hidden. And so many people, like the people that you see homeless on the side of the street aren't the ones that are representing the tens of thousands in the numbers of the statistics. And so who are they? And they're everyday people like you and I. They're mothers, their fathers, their children. And their stories aren't being told. And so often, I think, over the course of history is told by the victors, right? It's not the victims or those that are being conquered that get to dictate how history is told. And so I think as a journalist, I have an avenue, I have a pulpit, so to speak. I have a means through which to be able to set a version of history into play. And that I think that it's probably best to be able to do that for people that don't have voices. Because Lord knows there are a lot of people speaking for the people that do have voices, and so it's so that's what I would encourage you guys to do. I know it's easier said than done, but you all are very privileged to be here, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but it is a very, very awesome thing that you're here. Do any of you have friends that aren't able to afford college or university? Yeah, so they are not. And so what to do with this experience, I think, is at the crux of why you're here. And nobody can tell you that but yourself. And me personally, it took me a long time to figure it out because I think the allure of money and the fact that you need to put food on your table, and then also fame and wanting to be recognized for the things that you're good at. And I don't mean, Kanye West famous, but I mean just like, the good at your profession famous, the acknowledgement of your peers sort of famous, that sort of thing. That all it has its value, but I would argue that at the end of the day, if you're not helping your fellow person, then what's the use? If you're just out for you, then it's a very limited scope. So I would encourage you, and I'm more than happy to put you in touch. If there's any area in the community that you want to be involved in, chances are, we have 712, I think was the last count, of nonprofits in Charlottesville. So there's a lot of good-natured people with well-formed pockets that are up to good things here. And so chances are, if you want to do something, there's somebody that's either already doing it and or is, I don't know if this is a question or not, maybe somebody telling me to shut up. Can you tell us a little about National Park Reports? How did you decide to do this story? And do you know of any good journalism internships in the Charlottesville area? In the Charlottesville area, I don't off the top. There's a great one in Harrisonburg, which I don't think you'd have to go to Harrisonburg, but maybe once a week. But that is still a drive over the mountain. I can do some digging. It depends kind of what you want to do, whether for an internship, whether you want to do radio or TV or print, because obviously you'd want to tailor fit where you interned for that. So whoever this was, I can text you back and we can figure that out. As far as the National Park Reports, so I did a series on, it wasn't really a series, it's kind of just like a combination of stories that kind of fell into my lap. But basically just looking at different aspects of the national parks. And they're celebrating their centennial, so they are well established. So one thing I haven't gotten a chance to dive into around that is that national parks, a lot of them were people's homes. So people lived there, and those people probably weren't rich, they were poor. And so the government bought them out, but they had to move. And so there's a move afoot called the Blue Ridge Heritage Project, I believe, right now to basically acknowledge and commemorate those families who were displaced as a result of these national parks. And we're very grateful because they're awesome. We got bears and all sorts of things, but at the same time, these people had to move, and they had pretty sweet view, pretty sweet environments, even if they weren't rich. So I think that the memorials that are proposed are just a lone chimney. So you'll be driving along and you'll just see, this very 2-story, maybe 3-story tall chimney as a reminder of what was there before. But yeah, I did a story on electric vehicle usage. So they just inserted some charging stations throughout the national parks, which is pretty cool because I think climate change is probably one of the biggest issues for you guys and my generation to face. I mean, it's just huge. So we need to start figuring that out, and that's one small part of it. And the other that I'm working on right now is there was a 12,000 acre fire in March up there, and a lot of, I don't even know how much ecology was affected, but a lot. And so I'm headed out on Monday to explore it with a fire ecologist and to basically see what the long-term effect was and how this all kind of boils down. But so do you guys want to listen to another quick story, or would you rather just talk and converse? Anybody? Story? Yeah, cool. Awesome. All right, so I did a series on refugees. Like I said, the IRC settles about 250 refugees, 250 a year here in Charlottesville. And one of the series was, okay, you don't know English, you don't know anything about our grocery stores, you don't know anything about our traffic laws, you don't know if you do, it's very minimal. Some, and even, I'm talking fully educated, prominent people in their home countries. And you come to, how many of you have traveled abroad to non-English speaking countries? and how difficult is that? Like I don't know, maybe you guys are good at languages, but I think it's insanely difficult to try to navigate. And you feel like this, it's not a pariah, but you feel like you're an outsider, like so imagine trying to make your home here and do all of that. So anyway, I broke this up over 8 or 9 parts, basically looking at, how do you get health care? How do you do all of these sorts of things? And this particular part was about finding work. And so this is a guy named Nar Garung. He's an awesome, I forget how he's 32 years old. And he's got a newborn and a 1-year-old at home with his wife.
I'm just going to mark down on the sheet when you say each thing, okay? I'm going to pretend like I'm the tester there, okay? So I'm going to keep all the lights.
The morning temperature is below freezing when I meet 32-year-old Nar Garung at the Charlottesville Area Transit Bus Depot. He and his trainer, Ken, or Mr. Kenny as the kids call him, are practicing the 45-minute pre-trip portion of the commercial driver's license test. Garung was born in Bhutan and lived for 2 decades in the refugee camp in Nepal. But now, he's training to be a school bus driver for the city.
So, on the front of the bus, I will check for string box. So, string box should be, it should not be cracked. No missing notes and bolts.
Garung is one of more than 3,000 refugees who have moved to Charlottesville over the last 17 years through the International Rescue Committee's resettlement program. Housing, healthcare, school enrollment, these are all things the IRC immediately tackles when refugees first arrive. But right up there with these,
I help refugees find their first jobs when they come to Charlottesville.
Auntie Hackney is an employment coordinator with the IRC in Charlottesville.
Our work is really focused on helping ensure that people get their feet on the ground and become self-sufficient as soon as possible.
Within the first week of a newcomer's arrival, the IRC develops a resettlement plan with each refugee, pinpointing the type of job he or she can realistically get. They craft a resume and discuss any long-term career goals. In their home countries, some refugees have worked as farmers, doing manual labor with little education or professional training, while others have been doctors or engineers. But these technical skills don't necessarily translate into American life, at least not immediately.
We hope to put them on a career track where they can contribute to our community with those skills. That almost never happens with their first job. The first job is really about paying your rent and establishing a way to be self-sufficient financially and then build from there.
That usually means jobs in the $8 to $10 an hour range, which in Charlottesville means washing dishes at restaurants, cleaning hotel rooms at the Omni, or working as housekeepers at the Farmington Country Club. I met refugees who do all of these things, but the cost of living here is so high that just one of these jobs will often not cut it, especially if you have a family to support, which most refugees do. According to a recent report looking at Charlottesville's poverty and employment levels, a single parent with 2 kids would need to make at least $17.50 an hour to be able to support themselves independently. Garung supports his wife, who is pregnant, and his 2-year-old son, while helping his parents as well. When he moved here in 2012, he got a job at the Boar's Head Inn. After 3 months, the IRC helped him get a better job as a housekeeper at the University of Virginia Hospital, which hires lots of refugees, starting them at $10.65 an hour. Within a year, Goron was promoted to team leader and making $13 an hour. Clearly, Goron was hungry to do more. In the refugee camp, he had worked as a social worker for the United Nations High Commissioner on Refugees, helping suicidal and distraught refugee children. So how do refugees begin to build a career here? Some go back to school, says Hackney. They get the necessary U.S. certification in their respective fields, nursing, for example. The IRC partners with Piedmont, Virginia Community College, which offers adult career coaches. And for their first 5 years, refugees have access to the state's STEP program, which stands for Skills Training for Enhanced Earnings Potential. It's geared towards English proficiency and moving refugees from a survival job to a career job. Last year, the IRC introduced Goron to a new program the city had started called Growing Opportunities, or GO for short. The GO programs flip the traditional job model on its head. Instead of training someone in a skill and hoping to find them a job afterwards, the GO programs develop training curriculums based on the needs of specific employers in town. Then they train people with the assurance of a job at the other end. The city's graduated 7 classes since they started a year and a half ago.
The GO programs at the city have just been like a collective genius.
There's Go Electric for electricians, Go Clean for custodial services, Go CNA for certified nursing assistants, and Go Driver for bus drivers, like Goron. The program's open to all area residents, not just refugees. But in Goron's class of 7, 4 were from Bhutan, 1 from Afghanistan, and 2 from the US. For months, Goron's been showing up for training at 7 a.m., which goes until 1 in the afternoon. He goes home, eats lunch, changes clothes, and goes to work at UVA around 5 p.m. He doesn't get home until 2 in the morning, and then he wakes up and does it all again. But it's worth it, Goron says. Last week, he passed his road test, and pretty soon, he'll start driving actual kids on an actual bus, making $15.18 an hour.
We have to be a hard worker all the time because we don't have nothing here, so we have to struggle from the beginning itself. So if we struggle, there are lots of opportunity.
In some ways, Goron's been training for this job since he was a kid, living in the refugee camp. He and his friends use slippers to make small buses to play with. They'd make wheels and attach a rope to pull them along a miniature road.
Yeah, I was to be the bus driver pulling the rope.
2 months ago, Goron and his class graduated from the GO program, meaning that after 5 weeks of training, they had all passed multiple tests and received their commercial driver's license learner's permits. A small crowd of about 50 friends, family members, city employees, and area partners gathered to honor them in a ceremony downtown. Each graduate spoke about their experience and how the program had transformed their life. Goron recalled government-conducted killings, torture, and rape that his family had fled nearly 25 years ago in Bhutan, and just how grateful he was to be here now. His peers agreed and shared their own struggles they had overcome. Afterwards, they all stood up at the front of the room, together, and joined their voices.
We are not alone. We are not alone. We are not alone today. Oh, deep in my heart, we do believe that we are not alone today.
For WMRA News, I'm Jordy Yager.
So something I know coming down the wire, but I did want to, I'd be remiss if I didn't let you guys know this and just advise you, that as you heard, refugees a lot of times find jobs with the University of Virginia. And the biggest employer in Charlottesville is the University of Virginia. But you also heard that they start them off at $10.65 an hour, raise them up to $13 an hour. You can't raise a family on that. And so there is this dynamic that while there is a firm amount of support in the city for the university, there is also a conflict, and it doesn't have to do with you individually. So if you do come into contact with it, I think it's important to start to create relationships with the community at large. But there is this sense that the university is here, and it's kind of a one-way street, the conversation that's being had. As far as UVA saying this is what we need, this is what we want, and the city just having to take it and kind of move on and just make do with it. And now it's up to you guys as students here to make sure that that doesn't happen, and that you can transform that into being a dialogue and actually inquiring in the city about how you can be of service, how you can be of use, how you can make your talents useful and known throughout, and creating more of a discourse rather than just a one-way sort of lecture like this is. And that being said, there was one other thing. I mean, well, there's several other things I want to talk about, but we're probably out of time, right?
that we're going to get you to talk to us again in a whole variety of ways. Let's give the man a round of applause. Let me just say that Jordy is going to be participating in the Humanistic Conference next week. We're going to send an announcement around to everybody in Brown. I think the people in his IST are well aware of what that conference is all about. But Jordy, you said you're going to be taking a group of people, right?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
Well, so yeah, there's a major event on Saturday at Monticello where a whole host, I think it's like 9 or 10 people. I mean, we're talking Henry Louis Gates, Nikki Giovanni. I mean, some huge people are talking about race, slavery, our memory, how we look at things historically, all of these big, huge issues. I think is about 3-hour sort of panel discussion up at Monticello. But there's so many events here that it's all day Thursday, all day Friday. Really, if you can fit it into your schedule, definitely do it, because it's everything from journalism to, I mean, there's a talk on Beyonce and Kendrick Lamar. I mean, it's pretty much everything you could want, but it's happening now. It's time sensitive. It's important. It's right here.
And I know you're planning on taking a group of people on Saturday, you said? Yeah. So we'll get you all that detailed information. We'll figure out how to get you all there if you're interested in doing that. Chad?
The ACE co-chairship wanted to make sure to get a group together from Brown as well. So I just wanted to let both of you know that I'll be in touch with you guys.
Excellent. Absolutely super. It's exactly the kind of outcome we want from these presentations. Thank you so much, Jordy. All right, let me just tell you, next week we are going to change it up a little bit. We have Anna. We're going to get Greg Howard's picture up on the screen here. So come on back next week. We're going to have the stick man here. If you don't know about the stick man, the Chapman stick, it's time for you to learn about the Chapman stick. It is the most unique instrument in the world, and I think you're going to enjoy hearing him. He's going to do a demo, do a performance. He's going to talk to you about how he learned to do the stick and how you too can participate in being a stick person, the Chapman stick. Absolutely terrific. Google the guy. You can hear his songs, and hopefully you will find that really interesting. He's an adjunct professor here in the music department, and he certainly would be happy to work with any of you. All right, so you know we have a whole variety of things percolating along here. Among those things are your Portal professors. I know you've had a chance to look at your Portal professor stories. They are intriguing. They are fascinating. For example, have you figured out how many of them are buried in the UVA cemetery and how many of them are not? Who of the Portal professors was a founder, co-founder of MIT? You know who that person is? Great, great. Hopefully it's on your sheet. So if you can leave those sheets for me today, I'll start to work with those a little bit. If you haven't had a chance to read about your Portal professor and find an interesting fact you can share with us, please look online. It's on the Collab site. I uploaded the whole thing. It's also in the Sally Brown Reading Room because we want you to come to the Sally Brown Reading Room. It's there in booklet, hard copy form. So you have that to work on this coming week. We'll hopefully talk a little bit about the Portal professors next week as well. So again, let's give Mr. Yager a round of applause. Anna, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our guests, and most of all, thank you, Lighthouse. We are so pleased that you are here, and we're looking forward to a long relationship with you this semester. Thank you.